All right, everyone. Welcome to BlazerPulse 101 training, and thank you for taking time out of your mornings today to participate and learn more about the platform and how you can use it in your roles at UAB. I think we all know each other here, but I do think it's important for you to understand my role with BlazerPulse. And so in addition to some of the other work I do in the SIL office, I serve as the primary administrator for BlazerPulse, meaning that I oversee its oversight. That includes a committee of individuals at UAB who works to provide support in the areas of faculty engagement, data collection, as well as external relations. And then Jennifer Griffin and I also serve on that committee specifically to support oversight, as I mentioned, but also the student engagement component. And so my day-to-day responsibilities includes making sure the site's up to date, similar to how Alex supports Engage. And so I'm excited that the Pathfinders and Tony and student activities, you all have an interest in learning more about BlazerPulse and how it can be used. And so this morning, we're going to walk through some basic details about BlazerPulse. First, I want to provide some foundational information. Then we're going to spend most of our time jumping into the system and really just navigating it. And so I want you to feel free to ask questions as we go. This is a really, I think, open environment and a safe space to ask questions. There's not a right or wrong question. We just want to make sure that at the end of this, you have what answers you need so that you can support students and know how to use BlazerPulse yourself as well. Well, I didn't mean to go to the end of my presentation. Not sure what happened there. Okay, so essentially when we think about BlazerPulse, we're going to be looking at kind of the user profile. So we're going to figure out how to edit your profile, how to manage users if you have access to a group, how to manage events, and how to manage impacts. There is a difference between a user and an admin or manager as well. And so we're going to look through that and really talk about both. I told you I wanted to provide you with some foundational information about BlazerPulse, and it's important for you to recognize that you can use it as a user because BlazerPulse is for faculty, staff, and students to all contribute to. But also, I hope you will use it to promote BlazerPulse's use with other students. And so that's when the admin or manager role really comes into play. And so I'm going to stop my share briefly, and we're going to jump over to BlazerPulse. Let me get that pulled up real quick. So when you navigate to BlazerPulse, this is what you're going to see initially. If you have double screens right now, it might be helpful to walk through BlazerPulse with me as we go. If not, you can certainly watch this later or explore the site later on. But the very first thing that I outline to students and to faculty and staff is to make sure you're logged in. So you can see here where my cursor is in that top right corner, make sure you're logged in. That seems really basic, but even me as the primary administrator yesterday was searching for a volunteer opportunity and it wouldn't pop up. And I thought, well, where did that go? Come to find out, I just wasn't logged in. And so it doesn't always appear very visible that you're not logged in the way that Engage does. So make sure you're logged in. If a student can't find a volunteer opportunity that's been listed that maybe you've told them about, ask them, like, did you make sure you logged in? Because some volunteer events, you have to be authenticated to have access to actually see that event. And so that's really step one. The other pieces of this page, you have the option to explore service sites based on the zip code. This feature here is identical to this explore button that you're going to see up here. The functionality is identical. So a student can either start exploring through the homepage or return to explore at any time using that toolbar in the task or tool feature in the taskbar up at the top. Additionally, you're going to have the BlazerPulse word markup here in your left corner. This is how you're going to be able to return to the BlazerPulse homepage at any time. It won't look like this. I'm actually going to open it in a separate tab so that you can see what it's going to look like. It has visibility that I think is similar to Facebook. It's like the homepage for UAB essentially. And so you're going to be able to return to this again at any time by clicking on that word mark. In addition, you're going to have your profile, your activity, and if you manage any groups, you're going to see a manage feature. And so we're going to talk through each of these this morning. Before we talk through each of these, I want to talk a little bit more about why we need to use BlazerPulse. And so the university has a strategic plan that really guides the actions that our leaders at the university are making, and it should guide our roles as members of the university community. one of those strategic planning mission pillars is community engagement. So you can see here how that pillar is outlined. So it says that we will engage with the community in meaningful and mutually beneficial collaborations that contribute to public good. It goes on to identify 4 objectives related to that strategic initiative. And so when we think about BlazerPulse, this really contributes in multiple ways to the strategic planning. It integrates engagement throughout the university. It develops mutually beneficial partnerships. I'm going to show you who our community partners are and how you can find that if you're having a conversation with students. But ultimately, it really aligns with the strategic objective 1. Our goal through BlazerPulse is to expand access so it's easier for a student, faculty, or staff member to connect with volunteer opportunities. We know good work is happening across campus, but I also know that there's a pause from people when they can't pinpoint exactly how they get out to the community to serve. Maybe it's a new student this fall that has no clue anything about the Birmingham community because they're coming from out of state. BlazerPulse could serve as a tool for that student to connect in a way that's really, I would say, not overwhelming. Like they don't have to call anyone, they don't have to email anyone. They can just go see what volunteer opportunities exist and simply register and show up. And it'll provide them with all the information they need through BlazerPulse. So this expansion of access is really critical to the use of BlazerPulse and why it exists on UAB's campus. BlazerPulse began back in 2019. We launched BlazerPulse with MLK's Beloved Community. If you're not familiar with that event, that's an event hosted by the Leadership and Service Council, and registration for MLK's Beloved Community was required through BlazerPulse. So we had a lot of really good momentum going into 2019. In 2019 and 20, you can see that we had more than 40,000 hours logged on BlazerPulse, which was really incredible, just seeing the good work that's being done by our campus community. But we all know what happened next. The pandemic hit. In 2021, we saw those hours dip pretty significantly, and then we're back on the high rise, going back up that hill in 21-22. But what we've recognized is that since the pandemic, we've seen a decrease in the number of individuals wanting to sign up for volunteer opportunities. However, we've had an increase in the number of community partners. So you can see we went from 80 last year back to 128 community partners. And so the community has needs, but we need to help find volunteers to fill those needs. And so BlazerPulse can only be effective if we have volunteers, students, faculty, staff going and registering to serve and support these communities' needs. So it's really important, especially Pathfinders, as I think about the work you all do. If you have a student that wants to get involved, don't forget that community engagement is a form of involvement, and help them identify maybe a volunteer opportunity that they can go participate in. That's a really low committal way to get involved. It's typically a one-time commitment, but it ensures that they are creating community while serving the community and helps us with our strategic mission. And so let's jump back to the platform, and we're going to start walking through the components of BlazerPulse. And so we're going to start with our profile. So here you have a few things that are really important: the dashboard, add impact, and summary. Your profile and account are pretty basic. I'm going to show you really quickly just because I think that it's important you know what it is. It's very similar to a profile you might have on Facebook or any other form of social media, where you have the option to edit your profile. If you go to account, that's simply the edit view, and you can add things like skills you're interested in, causes that you're interested in. It's just a way to customize your BlazerPulse account. It's not required to customize though. And so that's something that is there if you want to play around with it and really get invested into the platform. Again, account is how you would edit those pieces. It's the same as this blue button right here. You can go through and provide all kinds of information. The one piece that I do think is really important on account is that you can provide a preferred first name. And so if you're working with a student, or if you yourself go by a different first name than what you are assigned legally, because we're going to pull in your legal name through the banner system automatically, so you can't edit that there. You can put this in and indicate that you want to use your preferred first name instead of legal name on the public pages. So I think that that piece is really important because we want people to feel comfortable as they're using the site. You can go through and see all kinds of other fun stuff here that you can play around with. You can link it to Facebook. You can link it to Engage, which I think is a lot of fun. BlazerPulse is a sister site to Engage. And so all the service opportunities on Engage are found on BlazerPulse, and you can go from Engage to BlazerPulse, which is really helpful. And so this is going to be that account view. The dashboard, though, is really the best place, in my opinion, to access what you're going to need while you're using the site. So let's go check out our dashboard. So here, you're going to see your memberships listed. If you have more than the 5 options it shows you, you can do show all and see those memberships. If you're a part of a service learning course, you'll see that course listed here. You can see your cumulative hours you've earned during your time at UAB, the number of impacts that made up those hours, as well as the number of groups you're a part of. And so for me, I have a really high number because I'm the administrator. A normal person would probably have 2 or 3. You can also see your registrations in a calendar view. So it's an easy place to go see kind of what you've signed up for. And so here you can see that I've registered for a few things. If I were to click on it, it's going to provide me with the information. I've already registered, so this is also where I could go to quickly add my impact for that event to share that I had completed it and to record those volunteer hours. If I wanted more information, I could also click on it here and go to the informational page to see who else is volunteering, the community partners. If this one's virtual, if it wasn't virtual, I'd also see a map and the address. So all the information you would really need to be using. If I had to, for some reason, cancel my registration, I could also go here to update my registration and cancel. And so all of that is provided for you there in your dashboard. So I think that this is one of the best places to direct students initially as they're learning to navigate the site. Outside of your dashboard, you have the option to add an impact, which we're going to go through together momentarily. We're not going to do that quite yet. And you also have your impact summary. I'm going to go ahead and show you your impact summary. So your impact summary is essentially a transcript of every time you've recorded volunteer service through BlazerPulse. You can see the breakdown by group. So let's say you are required to have 10 hours of community service for an organization you're a part of. It'd be easy to come in and see how many hours you completed for the semester, because you could come in and see, okay, in Serve 205, I've had 10 impacts, 21 hours, I'm good. Keep in mind that this is for the entire time you've been using BlazerPulse. And so if you've been a part of that organization multiple years, you would see all of your service hours there. It breaks it down by term. This could be really helpful for you if you're planning to apply to graduate school, or you have a professional resume or CV where you're wanting to add your community service hours. It summarizes it for you here by term, as well as provides each specific event you participated in. And so you can see here what those hours look like. You can see the person who verified it, the date it was verified, what the name of the event was, and the date you completed it. And so all of that, you see I have several here. They're going to be listed out for you all in one place through your impact summary. And so I think that this is a great benefit and tool we should be sharing with everyone, and you should be using yourself to track your hours. That does require you to record an impact though. And so let's look at how to record an impact. If you go back to add impact, you're going to be prompted with this screen. You can either search for something. So let's search for the botanical gardens, for example. If I served at the botanical gardens, I could click the botanical gardens. You should know if you click it from here, though, the person who's the administrator for the botanical gardens BlazerPulse site will be asked to verify your service. Let's say maybe you didn't connect with someone specifically at the botanical garden, so you're not really comfortable with them being emailed and asked to verify your service. They may have no clue who you are, right? But you were there and you served. If that's the case, go to Can't Find It, this button right here. You can type in the location, and then down here, it's going to give you the option to list your verifier. So maybe your verifier is another student you went to serve with, or someone else from the botanical gardens you interacted with while you were there, or perhaps it's your organization's advisor. They may give you instructions for what they want this verification to look like, and that's okay. You just use the Can't Find It feature to do that. Once you type in the location, you can add the specifics there. If you're a part of a service learning course, courses will be pre-populated into BlazerPulse. And so if you're in a service learning course, most likely you're having to complete volunteer hours that your instructor is requiring. You can put yes, that this is for a course and add the name of that course. It'll pre-populate if you're enrolled in one. You can add that course, and what that does is it shares your impact with that course instructor. So they're notified of your volunteer service. You go down, we've already discussed verification. Add the date, add the type of impact. Most frequently, we're recording time, so volunteer hours, but you can record, like if you donate money to a cause, if you donate goods. I think about people taking things to Blazer Kitchen, for example. If you participate in a training that is community focused, same with research, or if you voted, that's active citizenship in play and we want to know about it. You can also indicate other. For most of these, when you select it, it's going to generate a text box. You need to be thorough in that response. So money, it does donations. You can also do that you raised money if that was a fundraising event. Training, it can tell what type of event that was and the hours participated. Research, again, that text box. So lots of fun things there, but most often you're using time. So we'd put in the number of hours there. The next piece, it asks if this is only impactful to UAB. And so at UAB, there's some different definitions about what is community engagement. In my lens, community engagement and mutually beneficial relationships with the external community. However, sometimes there's volunteer opportunities that are specific to UAB. I'll use an example of Got a Question, Ask a Blazer, which happens at the beginning of each semester. You might be asked to volunteer for Got a Question, Ask a Blazer through BlazerPulse and register for it because it is a volunteer opportunity, but it only impacts UAB because it's not serving our external community. So we want you to check that if it only impacts UAB, because when we pull data, which is important anytime you're doing anything great, we want to be able to demonstrate that value we have to the community. We want to pull that out of our data to make sure that we understand that was just an internal volunteer opportunity. The next piece, and perhaps one of the most important pieces, is your reflection. And so reflection is a critical component of community engagement. And while it's not required to submit a reflection when you're recording an impact, I think it's really important that you're taking time to reflect on the work you did. Furthermore, whoever you list as your verifier will be able to see your reflection. So let's say, for example, Josie is in the Leadership and Service Council who has a volunteer service requirement. She submits an impact, doesn't know who to list as a verifier, so she lists me as her advisor. I'm not going to approve that unless Josie gives me some context of what she did while she went to volunteer. So I actually feel comfortable verifying, okay, it sounds like Josie was there. So I recommend at a minimum here to talk about what you did and how long you were there and who you met while you were there, things like that. So whoever the verifier is really can rest assured that they're verifying service that was completed. You have also the option to add personal notes that would be on your profile if you want to look at them later, attachments if you want to upload a picture. And then this piece is huge. So I've talked a lot about you can share this with your organization. You can share this with courses. I showed you how to share it with a course. Now I want to show you how to share it with an organization. If you're a part of an organization at UAB that's registered on Engage, that organization will automatically have a page in BlazerPulse. If you were accepted on the roster on Engage, you will automatically be on the roster on BlazerPulse. So it's beneficial for you to accept your Engage invitation so that you also show up in BlazerPulse. The benefit of showing up in BlazerPulse is you'll you will then see the groups on BlazerPulse. And let's say I'm a part of the Leadership and Service Council. I could select to share my impact with the Leadership and Service Council so that organization would see my hours, be able to count that towards any hour requirement I have, and count it towards the good work that they're doing that year. And so you want to make sure that you're sharing that with any organizations. You can share it with multiple organizations. In the BlazerPulse system, it won't count your hours multiple times, but each organization will be able to count your hours to see that, okay, you completed that, you met the minimum requirement, or so on and so forth. And then you add your impact, and it's as simple as that. The impact does have to be verified. So whoever you list up here will be emailed and asked to verify. I would recommend, if it's not verified in a few days, to reach out to that person directly and say, hey, you should have got an email from BlazerPulse. Could you go in and verify? If you're working with a student that they're kind of disengaged with BlazerPulse because they've submitted something that's never been verified, reach out to me. I can go in and verify. I have like superpowers, I guess, in BlazerPulse, where I can verify any impact. I am going to require that they leave a pretty detailed reflection though. So again, I can feel comfortable knowing they completed the work that they're saying they did. And so that's how you add an impact. Any questions so far? Okay. So moving on, we've looked at our profile and kind of the pieces here that are really important. Now I want to show you kind of the manage view. And so if you are a manager or an admin of a group, and so for our student organizations, for example, there'll be at least one student assigned to manage each of those groups. And typically it's the primary contact and engage who is the manager in BlazerPulse. They would be able to manage that group's events, registration. So if they post a volunteer opportunity, the volunteers who registered, we don't have internships, so you all wouldn't see that. And then also impacts. And so let's say you are over a group, that group has volunteers sharing impacts with you. If you go into impacts here, you would see all those pending impacts, and you could take action to either view, message the person, verify it, or dispute it. Dispute it is like denying it, but when you click dispute, it's going to make you say why you're disputing it and provide notes. If I were to do that, it would send it to that volunteer and it would allow them to edit it so that I could re-verify it once they fixed whatever issue I found with the service impact. And so you can see that you'd see all of those here. I have quite a few because I see all impacts. You would only see those relevant to your organization. If you have an event that you've created, so an event on BlazerPulse is a volunteer opportunity. You would see these events listed here. You could come in and click on it at any time to manage that event. And so let's see if I can find one to manage. We'll do this one, the World's Game Squash Volunteer. This takes you to the manage dashboard of the event. So this isn't what the volunteers see, only the people who have access to edit the event essentially or created it. From here, you can edit it. You can view what that looks like to a volunteer. So this is what it would look like if somebody came to register. You can come in and you can see, we'll look at registrations, who has registered for the event. So we'll manage our registrations. We can see myself and David Foster has registered. You can come in through that and view the details of their registration. You can mark them as signed in. When you sign them in, that automatically verifies their impact as well. You can also message them. So let's say this event ended up getting canceled and I needed to let everybody know. I could click, go to actions and message registrants. And then you can see who's being messaged over here, and you can message them through BlazerPulse. This sends to their UAB email, and if they reply, it will come back both to your UAB email through BlazerPulse, but also in your BlazerPulse profile, you'll have a little mailbox up here where you'll see it in both places. So another great way to communicate with volunteers and just to know that that's a resource that you have access to if you manage events. Any questions so far about event management? This is pretty high level. I'm not going to get too far into the weeds. I just want y'all to know generally how it works. Okay, so let's go back to the BlazerPulse homepage. And I want to show y'all how you can connect to volunteer opportunities. So first, if you go to the homepage, there's a tab for community partners. If you click on this tab, and slowly it's loading. Y'all bear with me, Zoom makes everything slower. It's going to populate all the community partners that are in the BlazerPulse system. You could search through them, find a partner that interests you. We're going to use the Birmingham Botanical Gardens again as an example. If you click on that, it's going to populate their BlazerPulse page. So the benefit of this, you can tell students that they can go find community partners they want to work with. And even if they don't have a volunteer opportunity posted, go and message them. It has the primary administrator there. Message them and say, hey, me and 3 friends are wanting to come out and serve. Or, hey, I want to serve for your organization, but I don't see any volunteer opportunities. Can I still come out and help? They could then message you back and provide information on how to volunteer. And so this is a really good resource that I definitely recommend that you tell students about, again, to go and look through who those community partners are and reach out to them. The other and really more significant and easy way to find volunteer events is either to go to events here or to explore here. These are the exact same thing. It doesn't matter which one you go through. I usually click on explore just so it's more visible up at the top. And this is going to pull up our volunteer list. And so there's a few ways you can search here. First, we're going to automatically be searching events. If you want to find a group, like let's say you want to look for Serve 205 specifically, you could change to groups and search for Serve 205 to see all of their specific events. But typically we're going to look at events and that's going to be the default view. You can search by keyword. You can search by location, the mile radius within that location. This is important because BlazerPulse is powered by a larger company called GivePulse. GivePulse is a national company, and in most metropolitan cities, there is a GivePulse presence. And so let's say someone's from Dallas, Texas, is going home for winter break and wants to get some volunteer service done while they're in Dallas. They could change this to Dallas, Texas, and they would see volunteer events relevant for their location. It's going to automatically pre-populate to Birmingham since that's our location. And so you don't have to search by keyword. You can just see what's available. And you all registered for BlazerPulse, so hopefully that was a good example of how to use this. But you can do a search. So maybe I want to search World Games. I'm sorry, I'm typing slow because I have one hand. Give it a second here. Okay. So we can see that World Games Squash Tournament came up. Other things we're pulling from those keywords. You might see some other opportunities that aren't quite as relevant, but if there is one that's directly relevant, it would pop up first. So if we wanted to register for this, we'd go, we'd see currently registration is closed, but I could see more information here. If I still wanted to reach out to the contact to see if there's any way I could still help, that person would be listed here and you could message them. If you were over this event, you can go to the manage view from here as well as the manage view from up here. So either way you can get there. All right. Any questions about how to find volunteer opportunities?
Hey, Lauren.
Yeah.
I know a lot of graduate students, and I know that Janelle's liaison areas with graduate students. I know a lot of them are interested in volunteering directly with the UAB hospital. I mean, I've directed them in the past to just use BlazerPulse to find opportunities. Is there anything else I need to share with them specifically about that type of volunteerism? I don't know if there's even volunteer opportunities through the hospital, but I see it a lot with like our graduate students.
I'm glad you brought that up. The hospital is not using BlazerPulse to post volunteer opportunities. And
Okay.
I wasn't aware that was a need. And so that's something I can do and follow up to this to see if there's a way they could start using it. I really don't have a good answer because we've not worked directly with them before, but I can say with certainty they're not posting experiences here. Really, the opportunities posted on BlazerPulse are most often external to UAB. But I will follow up on that, Alex.
Okay.
Any other questions so far? Somebody's awake, so y'all bear with me. He was hanging out of his pants, Lord. Okay. I hate that I have this recorded, me saying all that. All right, so outside of this, you can also search, let's say, and I hope you've heard about Sustainable Development Goals. Sustainable Development Goals are a group of 17 goals that are global goals created by the United Nations. This is an agenda for everyone globally to contribute to work towards for a greater global good, essentially. And so the SDGs, if you were to search by them, you can see what they're listed out as here. When someone creates an event on BlazerPulse, they can select the SDG or multiple SDGs that align with that event. So let's say the SDG that you're interested in is zero hunger. You could apply specifically that SDG and search for volunteer opportunities where the event administrator has indicated that SDG is a goal for the event. And so we'll see what populates here. I know Serve 205 uses these, and so that's a great way to search for things relevant for you. So we're seeing stuff like Blazer Kitchen, Meals on Wheels, for example. And so that's just a cool way if a student has a passion area for you to be familiar with what SDGs are and say, okay, let's go see if there's anything relevant to that passion area that you could go and serve with. And so, for example, another passion area we hear a lot that kind of makes me think of what you were talking about, Alex, is good health and well-being. So we could search by that one. You want to see what's going on? Say, hey, everybody. Sorry, it's taking a moment to load. Again, Zoom slows things down. Okay, so we could see some of those things are similar. We got United Way, Meals on Wheels, but you can search again by that SDG, which I think is really helpful.
Hey,
All right.
Lauren. For the impact summary, I know it doesn't pull the SDGs like related to the service projects that students do. Is that something we should encourage them to put on their resumes, like the SDGs associated with their service, or is that something that
I think
do
that
people
if
typically
you-
want those service hours?
I think that people are typically looking more for those service hours because frankly, SDGs aren't widely adopted enough by corporate companies and things such as that nature that they're going to know that language or be able to pick up on what that is. I think we're working towards it, but we're not there yet. What I would recommend, oh my goodness, y'all, I'm so sorry if you heard him burp. What I got distracted. What I would recommend is that you don't list the actual SDG, list your hours, but if you have space on your resume to list kind of a couple bullet points for what you did during service, that you would reflect on what that SDG is and say contributed to a global goal of no poverty by, and maybe say what you did. But I don't think that, again, they're widely adopted enough for you to use paper space that you might need for something else to put it on there. I think it'd be great to be able to have a conversation about it in an interview. If they ask you, well, what'd you do at the Ronald McDonald House? Well, if you could connect that to an SDG and make it sound like you really know what you're talking about, that could set you aside as a candidate. Any other questions? Those are good. Okay, so we're going to return to this manage view then. There's lots of other things you can do on BlazerPulse. You can see the campus groups here. So if a group, let's say a student, especially Pathfinders for y'all, if they come to you and they say, you know, you said I should be able to see my group on BlazerPulse, but I can't find them. It is possible that their group has not been merged onto BlazerPulse yet. I do want to be honest and share that there is a man-made component where we have to pull the information from Engage to put it in BlazerPulse. I try to do that at the beginning of each registration period, but sometimes an organization gets overlooked. It can happen. So what you would do is come to campus groups, search for that organization, or Tony, you as an advisor, if you were trying to find your organization, you could do the same thing. Come search for that organization. If you can't find it, it's as simple as messaging me directly and I'll take care of making sure they get a page created. What I would ask is that they let me know who that primary administrator is. So hopefully that's helpful as well. Outside of that, I don't want to overwhelm y'all with content. I really think this is how you would be using it as a user. And additionally, if you are supporting a student using it, there are lots of ways within your organization you can use it. So we're going to look at a few of those, but recognize that you as a user might never use it this way. But if you were an administrator of a group, you would be. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard. And I'm going to pick one of these groups I'm a member of, and with the assumption that I manage those groups. So I'm going to pretend I'm the primary administrator for Serve 205. And so we can see here that Mega Ganta is the primary administrator for Serve 205. But let's say that Mega is one administrator. Alex also needs to be an administrator as their advisor. And let's pretend that I also need to be an administrator because I'm a project coordinator. And so you can add more administrators so people have access to add events, edit content, and really manage their BlazerPulse site. To do that, you would come to the blue Manage button and go to Manage Users. Here, you're going to see every user. Now, on BlazerPulse, it's a little different than an Engage roster. A user is anyone who has interacted with that organization. So a volunteer, for example, counts as a user. So you can see a volunteer might be listed as a registrant or a participant, whereas a member, let me find a member. Well, they're actually all check-in attendance right now because Serve 205 uses this at a little higher level, but a member would say member. And so let's say, for example, again, I wanted to make sure Alex was an admin. We can see she has that access here, but if you go to the drop-down menu, I could remove her access or add it. It would say add if she did not already have access. And so this is how you're going in to kind of give people more access as needed within that user, within that organization's user list. There's also going to be times where you have some people maybe you need to remove, maybe last year's admins. You can't remember who they were. You don't have to go through the whole list. You can come up to user role and do has role admin, filter by that to see who all has role. Last year, for example, Sierra Samuel was the organization's president. She doesn't need admin access anymore. So I could come in here and I could remove her admin access. And so same thing, like technically I don't need admin access anymore. So I could remove my admin access. While I'm here, should I remove Kamya's admin access as well, Alex? Okay, so we're going to remove Kamya's admin access also. So this is just some cleaning up you can do. Being an admin does mean they'll get notifications as well. And so if someone emails somebody angry that, hey, why am I still getting these org emails? You would know how to go in and do that. Okay, so that's users. Now that we're in here, we don't have quite as pretty of a manage view. If I go back to the public page, which we can do at any time, you can access this cleaner manage view, which is really all you would need to be using. This is the same thing. It just looks a little bit clunkier than it did on the main page. I will share BlazerPulse is actively in the process of making things look cleaner. And so some of these views will change really in this next year. I'm hoping this is one of them. But some other things you can do, you can add an event. That's going to be on the main page. Let's see where we go. As add a volunteer opportunity. You can manage impacts, you can manage those opportunities. And so if we do that, we'll click add event here to see what this looks like. You're going to be asked to provide a title, a description, a cover image. This cover image, it provides you with the details for that. Whoever is submitting the event will be listed as the administrator. If that should be someone else, they can change that there. And then you have different types of events. Typically, we're either doing a volunteer event, a regular event, which frankly, there's no difference between these two, a project, which is more often like training or research based, or a pledge. A pledge is just where they indicate that they will participate. So they're literally pledging their committal to donating to the Blazer Kitchen, for example. There is an option if you're looking specifically to donate items to go into the dashboard and do giving and add a fundraiser, or you can make it a donation when you do it. So I'll open this for y'all to see what it looks like. It looks a little bit different. You can do a donation drive instead. And so another option for you to collect information, the way it looks on the back end is different from that volunteer project. So you go in and add these informations. You can indicate if it's single, happening multiple times. So that way you're not having to post all the occurrences individually. You can do those at once. And then the most important piece here is the privacy level. So let's say the Blazer production assistants are hosting an event during homecoming week where they are trying to recruit volunteers. They only want it to be UAB volunteers though. If you leave it as public, that does mean that anyone that goes to GivePulse, which is the platform that really manages BlazerPulse, would be able to see this. Serve 205, as an example, has had random people show up at our events before because we made them public. If you only want it for UAB people, change it to private primary network. That would make sure that it's just people who are logged in. But that's why it's critical that you do log in, because you may not see those opportunities if you're not. And so private primary network is one of the biggest pieces of support I provide to people when they're like, well, why did, for example, the School of Medicine post some events that are just for School of Medicine? They want to know, why did this random freshman show up? Well, that's because you made it public. Anyone could register. If you make it primary network, the freshmen could still register. So if you wanted only members of your organization, you could change it, I can't see from my Zoom, to either invite only your organization's group, or you can tag specific people who should be going. And so that's just kind of some options you have there. And so when you save and continue, you can see there's a number of other features that you can explore from your registration settings. Here you could create a passcode if you wanted someone to have a password to be able to register for the event. You can edit the actual registration form. So let's say you're giving away t-shirts for volunteers that attend. You could ask for their t-shirt size. You can create custom form questions similar to Engage. You have impact settings, so you could predetermine the number of hours, for example, they're going to be able to share in their impact. We also have an impact form where if when we send them an email that says, hey, confirm your impact after the event, you can add additional questions that's going to allow them to customize that impact. There's event settings. Those are pretty basic things like you would expect on any event. You can add things like what's the parking information. Causes, if you recall from the profile, you could pick your causes. Similarly, for an event, you can indicate what causes you're supporting. And then you have SDGs where you'll select the SDGs relevant, and skills is similar to profile. You can align those with skills. The benefit of that is if you pick skills and then say, hey, we're not having much luck recruiting volunteers, what I can go do is I can see what skills you identified and then go pull users who've updated their profile to say they're interested in those skills, and we can connect volunteers that way. And so pretty basic, not hard to do. You can save it and continue and work on this over a course of days, or you can publish once you're ready. I know for some groups, I recommend that you save and continue and then have like whoever your BlazerPulse expert for that organization is to go in and publish it on the org's behalf, because any admin would be able to access it once it's saved and continued. And so that's how you'd be creating events if you were doing so from an organization page. You can also view registrations anytime from the event view. I showed y'all registrations earlier. That's helpful essentially just to message volunteers and know who's coming or to mark them as attended. There's also a BlazerPulse app you can use to track attendance that I'd be happy to show y'all or provide directions for if you're interested in using that as well. So lots of ways our student organization community can use this. If you have a student organization that's just asking you kind of high-level questions that you have no clue really what to support, don't make it up. That's okay. BlazerPulse is a robust system. Connect them with me and I can help walk them through it. I'd love Pathfinder specifically, if we do make a connection like that, for you to also be a part of that conversation so you will see the answer and hopefully be able to help that student the next time around when another org comes to you. But no, I'm here to support y'all in any way with any BlazerPulse question. I need your help though getting students to BlazerPulse and making sure that they're actively using it. I know a lot of what I've shared has been pretty specific to Pathfinders recruiting student orgs to use it, but Tony, did you have any specific questions for me, or are you just trying to learn in general?
I'm just learning in general right now.
Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate that. Well, you all, that's really primarily what I had planned. And so I want to hear if there's any additional questions. And if not, we can wrap up about 15 minutes early today.
I do have another Pathfinder motivated question.
Okay.
I know that we are working on our, community service and engagement, not office, our involvement fair. And I know that our community partners, you said, are 128. I know that you and I specifically, and I know that I've talked with the Pathfinders individually about this as well, about potentially inviting some of those community partners to this that involvement fair. How do you suggest we, identify who those community partners should be out of that 128? Like, is there a way for us to see who's the most active on BlazerPulse, or who recruits the most, or who doesn't, that kind of thing?
So I would actually recommend that you maybe do a broader invitation, and like once your spots are full, they're full.
Okay.
And so we might pull in someone that maybe hasn't been active on BlazerPulse, but it's hard to use that as our baseline because of the pandemic. And so I know, for example, I had a group reach out to me last month that hasn't used BlazerPulse at all until recently because the population they serve was an at-risk population. They were like disabled adults. And so they haven't been accepting volunteers for the past 2 years. And so I'm hesitant to say that we should use BlazerPulse activity to invite partners. But what I could do is export a list of those partners with contact information and let y'all send out kind of a broad, here's an opportunity email, and just see which ones respond. I think you could state in the email that you have a limited number of available tabling spots. The other piece I'd recommend is, and Alex, I know you're familiar with this, but we do have an external spreadsheet that Serve 205 and LSC uses, and I would work off that. If y'all want me to personally go through and kind of highlight the groups we work with most often to maybe do some more direct outreach to, I could do that for you, just so that you know, like, these typically respond to us. We have an ongoing relationship with them. I could provide that context for you, just kind of highlighting that list. That's a good question though. And I will say I would love for BlazerPulse to have a table. So if y'all could go ahead and reserve a table for me, I'm going to see if Gigi maybe will let me use a TV screen to have like a BlazerPulse demo going during the event. Any other questions?
I had 2 questions.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first question was in the pulling over like the volunteer transcript. Is there a way you can also pull all of the reflections that you've written in your impact, or does that like separately you have to go in and I guess copy and paste them from each impact you've written?
That's a great question. Let's see if we can figure that out together. Let me share my screen back. Hold on. So I know in your dashboard, you can view all your impacts. You can also do that from your profile. Let's see. Why did that not populate anything? So I definitely have impacts. Okay, well, that's not a good example. I'm not sure what happened there. Let's go back to our dashboard to see if we can pull it from there. Can't click on it from there, and I'm not wanting to add, so we've got to go through our profile. Here we go. I don't see an option to export the impacts though. Here you could see them. So like if I had left a reflection here, I could have, I don't know. That's not a solution to what you're asking me for, Michaela. I'm not sure if that's possible or not. Let me do some more exploration. I thought we might could figure it out together pretty quickly, but I'm not seeing the way to go about being able to export it. I know it doesn't show up on your impact summary. And so I'm not confident there's a way to do that. As an organization, you can go and export all the reflections in one place. And additionally, as an administrator, I could go in and export all of your reflections. So if I couldn't do that for every member of the university community, but if there's 1 or 2 students who ask y'all for that, you could reach out to me and I can pull it for them in an Excel file and send it to them. But I'm not sure BlazerPulse does that for y'all. So that's something I can check in with. I can search a little bit more and ask the company about. That's a great question.
Okay, thank you. I was just wondering. And then my second question was that I know you mentioned that service learning courses will automatically populate as someone you can share your impacts with. But I know from experience, like there are other courses that require volunteering but aren't necessarily service learning. So I'm thinking of like those higher level classes that most students take in their final year, which are like the internship level classes, and they aren't necessarily service learning, but it's counted as volunteer. Is there a way that professors can go in and add those classes, or you as a student yourself can like have that class added so that you can have it kind of grouped together and categorized as an impact that you made related to that course, even though it's not necessarily already listed?
Yeah, what a great question. I'm glad you brought that up. There's not a way as a student for you to add the class. The professor would have to do it. But yes, we can add the class manually. They could reach out to me and I can help them set that up. Or there is something called a service learning attribute that I could talk with your professor about. If it's something that they would do on the back end, there's just a form they fill out I could share with them. But if they want to classify the class as service learning, since they have a requirement for volunteerism, they could add that attribute. Sorry, y'all, he's talking too. They could add that attribute and it would automatically populate for them without them having to do anything each semester. But at a minimum, we could add it and add the students, enroll them manually. So yeah, that we could definitely do that, but it has to be the professor, be the one driving that, not the student. I would say your professor might not have a clue what BlazerPulse is the reality though. And so Michaela, if you're in a course like that, it might be helpful for you as a student to go to them and say, have you thought about using BlazerPulse for us to log our volunteer hours? This is why I think that would be helpful. And then you can say, you can reach out to Lauren Cotian if you want help. Here's her email address, for example. And that might be a way to get them using BlazerPulse. Y'all can help us spread the word in that way as well.
I would definitely be doing that because I had that like question from when I did a course to finish off my psychology minor and I needed to get all these volunteer hours, but I had no way of like associating directly with the class. So I will be bringing that up to the teacher. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad you asked. I would love to connect with some professors. Great question, Joel. Anything else before we wrap up? Okay. Well, thank you all so much again for joining me this morning. Thanks for tolerating our little coworker that I had with me. If y'all have any questions throughout the year, you all know where to find me. Don't hesitate to reach out, and I hope to see y'all using BlazerPulse this next year. Y'all have a good rest of your day.